There is a quiet struggle happening inside the hearts of men today, a silent ache, an invisible fracture that few are willing to name. For centuries, masculinity acted as a compass, something steady, rooted, an inner orientation that guided men through storms. It was not perfect, but it was a reference point, and yet now, that compass feels broken. Many men wake each morning feeling adrift, restless, uncertain, as if their inner map has been erased. Neuroscientist Karl Pribram once described the brain not as a machine that simply records reality, but as a holographic field that actively creates the very map through which we experience the world. That map shapes how we see ourselves, how we hold our role in society, how we find meaning. But when culture distorts or shames masculinity, what happens to that holographic map? It fractures. Men inherit an incomplete image of themselves, like a mirror cracked down the middle, unable to recognize their own wholeness. Think about this. If you were handed a compass that pointed in every direction at once, how far could you go? No matter how strong your ship, no matter how vast the ocean, you would drift. That is the condition of many men today. It is not a lack of potential. It is not weakness in their nature. It is a broken map of meaning. And in this brokenness, a dangerous cycle unfolds. Joe Dispenza explains how repeated patterns of thought, when fueled by overstimulation and constant digital noise, rewire the brain for short-term dopamine hits. A quick scroll, a quick win, a quick release. This neurological loop leaves little space for patience, discipline, or long-term purpose. Men are not fragile because they lack strength. They are fragile because their nervous systems are being trained for immediacy, leaving no muscle for endurance. But here is the truth. This fragility is not final. It is not the end of the story. What feels like collapse can also be the beginning of a deeper initiation, a chance to reprogram the inner map, to restore a compass that points to direction, responsibility, and strength rooted not in domination, but in emotional integrity. In the next few minutes, we will travel through the hidden forces that weakened masculinity. The silent erosion of rites of passage, the prison of overprotection, the invisible addiction of dopamine, the cultural demonization of strength, and the loss of purpose. Each of these forces shapes the hologram of identity in ways men often do not recognize, but once seen, they can be transformed. And before we dive deeper, pause for a moment. If these words resonate with something inside you, if you feel the weight of this struggle or see it in someone you love, stay with me. Subscribe to this channel, leave a comment sharing your experience, and share this video with someone who might be carrying this invisible burden. Because the conversation about masculinity cannot remain in silence anymore. It is not just about men. It is about the wholeness of families, communities, and the generations to come. This journey begins here, with the forgotten map of masculinity. And what we will uncover may change how you see yourself and how you see the men in your life forever. There was a time when becoming a man was not a vague idea, but a marked transition. In ancient cultures, rituals carried boys across an invisible threshold. There was fire, there was struggle, there was fear that had to be faced, and there was a community to witness that transformation. Those moments carved a line in the soul. You are no longer a child. You are responsible. You are capable. You are seen. Today, that line has faded. The rituals are gone. The passage is unmarked. And so many men grow in body, but remain suspended in an adolescence of the heart. They carry responsibilities, but inside, they still wait for the moment of recognition that never came. They wait for someone to say, "You are ready." And when that voice is absent, they drift in uncertainty, masking the ache with distraction, achievement, or silence. Karl Pribram's work offers a profound lens here. He suggested that the brain encodes life not only through events, but through the symbols and patterns that give those events meaning. When a rite of passage is missing, the brain lacks the symbolic imprint to anchor a new identity. The man lives in a limbo between stages, carrying a fractured sense of self. It is not that he is unwilling to grow. It is that his inner hologram never received the pattern of initiation to reflect his own strength back to him. You can see the traces of this everywhere. Men excelling at work but feeling hollow at home. Fathers who can provide materially but who silently feel like boys in the presence of true responsibility. Partners who avoid commitment, not because they do not care, but because they never cross the invisible line into knowing their capacity to hold weight without collapsing. And beneath all of this lies a hidden pain, the craving to be seen in the moment of becoming. Many men never speak of it, yet it whispers in their choices, in their addictions, in the restless search for recognition. Without a rite of passage, life becomes a series of unfulfilled rehearsals. The stage is built, but the play never begins. The erosion of rites of passage is not just a cultural loss. It is a neurological wound, a spiritual fracture, and until it is faced, masculinity remains fragile, not because it lacks strength, but because its foundation was never sealed. This is the first silent force we must see clearly. The journey continues as we step into another hidden trap. Comfort disguised as love, and how protection can slowly become a prison. There is a paradox hidden in modern life. In trying to protect men from hardship, we have stripped them of the very weight that forges resilience. Parents, schools, even entire systems now work tirelessly to shield young men from failure, from risk, from discomfort. At first glance, it looks like love, but underneath, it becomes a quiet prison. For without friction, there is no strength. Without challenge, there is no growth. Karl Pribram's insights remind us that the brain strengthens itself through novelty and struggle. Every new challenge forces the nervous system to adapt, creating stronger neural circuits that prepare us for the future. But when challenge is removed, those circuits weaken. A man can be intelligent, creative, even ambitious, but without ever meeting resistance, his foundation remains fragile. His mind and heart, untested by the fire of difficulty, stand unprepared when life inevitably storms. Think of a sword. If it never meets fire, if it never feels the hammer against its steel, it does not become sharper. It begins to rust. It may look whole from the outside, but at the first strike, it bends. That is what overprotection does to the human spirit. It builds the illusion of safety, but silently erodes resilience. This is why so many men today, even with comfort, even with opportunity, feel unequipped when true adversity arrives. The first heartbreak, the first failure, the first loss of direction, and suddenly the entire structure collapses. The man wonders, what is wrong with me? But nothing is wrong with him. The issue is not his capacity. It is that he was never allowed to test it, never allowed to fail and rise again, never trusted to face fire and discover his own strength within it. The emotional reality of overprotection is subtle, but devastating. Men who are given every resource often feel the most hollow. They cannot name why, but deep down, they sense that comfort has robbed them of initiation, and so fragility appears not because men are weaker than generations past, but because they were never given the chance to practice strength before the world demanded it. This is the second silent force behind the crisis of masculinity. First, the erosion of rites of passage. Now, the prison of comfort disguised as care. And yet, there is a third force even more insidious, one that does not come from society alone, but from the very design of our nervous system. It is the invisible addiction that rewires the brain from within, the hijack of dopamine. Dopamine, hijack, the invisible addiction. There is a hunger that consumes men today, but it is not the hunger for food or even for meaning. It is the hunger for stimulation. In a world designed to deliver constant bursts of novelty, Men are drawn into a cycle of invisible addiction: games, pornography, endless scrolling, the quick hit of digital validation. Each of these floods the brain with dopamine, each creating a spark of satisfaction that fades almost as quickly as it arrives. Joe Dispenza often speaks about how repeated patterns of thought and behavior condition the body to crave certain emotional states. What begins as choice becomes chemistry. The brain wires itself for micro-pleasures, training the nervous system to chase instant relief instead of long-term fulfillment. In time, the man does not even seek pleasure. He seeks escape from the emptiness between dopamine hits. He becomes restless, impatient, unable to endure silence or boredom. But boredom is not the enemy. It is the soil of creativity, the quiet space where purpose and vision begin to emerge. When boredom is intolerable, men lose the very ground upon which discipline and meaning are built. They lose the capacity to sit with discomfort long enough to discover who they are beyond distraction. And in that loss, fragility is born, not because men are weak, but because their nervous systems are collapsing under the weight of overstimulation. This is why the modern addiction to stimulation is so deceptive. It feels harmless, it feels normal, yet it quietly strips men of endurance, of the ability to hold focus, of the patience required to build something lasting. It replaces the slow burn of fulfillment with the flicker of instant gratification. And when life demands patience, sacrifice, or presence, men find themselves unprepared. The inner muscle of resilience has withered. The wound beneath this addiction is not just chemical, it is existential. A man drowning in stimulation is often a man running from emptiness, numbing the absence of initiation, numbing the pain of overprotection, numbing the hunger for purpose that nothing shallow can ever satisfy. The dopamine hijack does not just weaken men's bodies, it blinds their souls to the deeper truth of who they could become. This is the third silent force weakening masculinity. First, the missing rites of passage, then the prison of overprotection, now the invisible chains of dopamine. And yet, there is another force at work, one that comes not from distraction, but from culture itself, the demonization of strength and the loss of balance it creates. Demonization of strength. The lost balance. There was a time when strength was seen as a gift, a force not only for survival, but for protection, for leadership, for guidance. Yet, in recent years, strength has been painted in darker shades. Assertiveness, discipline, leadership, qualities once admired, are increasingly framed as toxic, as if to be strong is to be dangerous, as if to claim one's fire is to risk harming the world. Karl Pribram's work with the holographic brain reminds us that the mind does not only process reality, it interprets it through the projections of culture. When society projects strength as something shameful, men begin to encode that shame deep within their neural pathways. They feel guilty for their natural impulses to lead, to protect, to rise. The hologram of masculinity becomes distorted, and the man who once sought balance begins to fracture. The paradox is painful. Men are told to soften, to dim their edges, to cut away the roots of their power. But when the roots are severed, the tree does not grow gentler, it withers. A man stripped of his strength does not become more whole. He becomes anxious, restless, uncertain of his place in the world. The fire that could have been harnessed for creation, for devotion, for service, flickers weakly in the shadows, unclaimed and misunderstood. This is not a call to defend aggression or domination. True strength has never been about control. It has always been about integration, the ability to carry responsibility without collapsing, the ability to hold tenderness without breaking, the ability to stand in storms without losing one's ground. When strength is demonized, that balance is lost. What remains are men unsure whether to express or suppress, men who distrust their own instincts, men who mistake suppression for virtue, And so fragility grows, not because men are inherently fragile, but because they are living in dissonance, shamed for what they are and left without a vision for what they could be. When strength is seen as poison, masculinity becomes a ghost of itself, present, but unable to take form. This is the tragedy of the lost balance. Men do not need to abandon strength. They need to remember its purpose. They need to anchor it in love, in service, in meaning. Because when fire is contained by wisdom, it warms. When fire is denied, it either dies or it burns uncontrolled. From here, another wound begins to reveal itself. It is deeper than overprotection, deeper than distraction, deeper than shame. It is the absence of direction. And without direction, no man can feel whole. This brings us to the forgotten language of purpose. The forgotten language of purpose. Beneath all the noise, beneath the distractions, beneath the masks men are asked to wear, there is a quiet longing. It is not simply for success or status or pleasure. It is for something older, something deeper, a sense of purpose. Purpose is not a prize. It is not something handed to us by circumstance. It is a direction, a thread that gives weight to our struggles and meaning to our endurance. Without it, even victories feel hollow, and even the strongest body feels weak. Karl Pribram once revealed that the brain does not store isolated fragments of life. It encodes patterns, weaving them into meaning. A man without purpose is like a man trapped in scattered memories. His experiences do not connect, his pain has no arc, his sacrifices feel wasted. But when direction is present, every moment, even suffering, integrates into a larger design. The nervous system calms because it finally knows, this is where I am going. Yet today, purpose has become foreign to many men. They chase micro-pleasures, they numb themselves with noise, but inside, the question gnaws. What am I willing to give myself to? What am I willing to endure for? Without an answer, anxiety multiplies. Procrastination tightens its grip. Nights feel restless. Days blur together. The body knows it was made to carry weight, but without a mission, that strength turns inward and corrodes. Purpose does not mean grandiosity. It is not always about saving the world. Sometimes it is about showing up fully for a family, about protecting what is sacred, about building something that lasts beyond the self. It is about finding the thread that ties a man's actions into something greater than comfort, greater than survival. When that thread is lost, fragility grows. When that thread is found, resilience awakens. To rediscover purpose is to rediscover language itself, not words spoken outward, but the silent language of the heart that whispers, "This is worth it. This is why I rise. This is why I endure." When that voice returns, clarity follows. The mind stops scattering. The body steadies. Even in pain, there is direction. Even in failure, there is meaning. And this is where the journey begins to turn, because fragility is not destiny. Masculinity is not broken beyond repair. The map can be redrawn. The compass can be rebuilt. And in that rebuilding lies the possibility of a man not diminished, but reborn. From here, we step into the closing truth, that the compass within can be restored, that the hologram of the mind can be reshaped, and that even fragility can become the doorway to a deeper, stronger form of manhood. This leads us into the conclusion, rebuilding the inner compass. Rebuilding the inner compass. Every man carries within him a compass, though many do not realize it. It is not made of steel or glass. It cannot be held in the hand or placed in the pocket. It lives in the nervous system, in the heart, in the subtle pulse of the spirit. When that compass is intact, life may still be difficult, but direction remains clear. When it is broken or buried, a man drifts, moving from one shore to another, never quite belonging anywhere. The tragedy is that most men believe the compass has been stolen from them. They think life, society, or fate has taken it away. But the truth is gentler and harder. The compass was never stolen. It was silenced. Silenced by noise, by shame, by distraction, by the endless pressure to be everything and nothing at the same time. Yet silence is not destruction. What has been silenced can be remembered. What has been buried can be unearthed. Neuroscience reminds us that the brain is not fixed. It is plastic, alive, forever capable of rewiring. The holographic mind that Pribram described shows that reality itself bends to interpretation. And this means one essential thing: no man is condemned to drift forever. The inner compass can be restored, not by imitating what masculinity was, nor by surrendering to what others demand it to be, but by listening inward, patiently, until direction begins to emerge again. The rebuilding does not happen in an instant. It begins in fragments, in small moments of alignment. A man recognizes when his actions match his values. He feels a weight lift when he chooses integrity over convenience, when he chooses responsibility not as a burden, but as a path to freedom. Each choice is like polishing the needle of the compass, allowing it to point more clearly, more steadily. The compass does not lead to perfection, it leads to wholeness. It teaches a man that strength is not the absence of pain, but the capacity to move through it with direction. That love is not weakness, but a force that gives strength its meaning. That purpose is not found in running from fragility, but in transforming it into resilience. When the compass is restored, the storms do not disappear, but the man no longer fears being lost within them. And this is the invitation: to remember. To remember that within you there is already a compass waiting to be uncovered. To remember that you were never meant to drift without direction. To remember that your strength, your tenderness, your purpose are not opposites, but threads of the same design. When they are woven together, you do not simply rebuild masculinity, you rebuild yourself. If these words spoke to you, share them. Let others hear what you have heard. Subscribe, so this journey does not end here. And leave your thoughts below, because your voice may be the spark another man needs to find his compass again. Together we are not just remembering, we are rebuilding.